Hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to host a high converting virtual summit that leads to your biggest signature offer launch yet. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and I'm so excited for today's episode. If you have been around a while and just happen to pay close enough attention to key in on my marketing patterns, you know that I love a good live launch. Evergreen is amazing. The sales coming in at any random time are great, but I just love the energy and connection of a live launch. Also the added revenue is a plus, but you just can't match that energy and that connection you get to make with your audience. And I mean, it's good that I like that, right? Because that's what a summit is. And with helping people with summits all the time, I do see people often ending up in burnout, which really breaks my heart. I want you to love the heck out of the summit hosting process, but there are certain decisions that we tend to make throughout the process that make a summit or really any launch become stressful more than fun. And that's why I'm so excited to bring on a special guest today to talk to us about creating luxurious and burnout-free launches. And I just love the sound of that. So to give you some background information on our guest, she is a launch strategist and copywriter who has helped hundreds of online brands execute 100K plus marketing and launch campaigns, grossing over 3.5 million in revenue. She supports 6 and 7 figure coaches and course creators in creating lush and luxurious launches. Her framework when she works with her clients is based on objective business data and subjective personal experience, which enables her clients to preserve and grow their launch revenue, avoid burnout, and still enjoy their lives, all while designing a launch experience that rejuvenates and preserves their well-being. And for some of you, like me when I read that the first time, that sounds impossible. You're like, what even is this? And I'm so excited for you to hear what Chelsea has to share today. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk with Chelsea Wallace from the Launch Copy Coach. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you, Krista. Hi, everybody. I am so thrilled to be here. I cannot tell you. It is such a pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you so much, Krista. I know thanks a lot, but thanks.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. And your energy is so contagious. I could barely get through our intro here. And honestly, I'll probably end up re-recording it. So if you all listen to the intro and I didn't just mess up constantly, it's because I re-recorded it because I'm just pumped. The energy is good and I'm talking too fast and this is going to be so much fun. So thank you for being here. Before we dive into all the goodness we have planned about launches, can you just tell us a little bit more about you and about your business and anything we should know?
Yeah, sure. So, I am born and raised Jamaican, living in Jamaica. So I'm operating this business from Jamaica with clients all over the world. And that brings, of course, its own time zone and other challenges. But I did want to say that as an additional thing that you should know about me, because it, I think, gives me a sort of, and I've had clients say this to me, which is why I'm saying it now, a sort of chill perspective, an island vibe to launches, where it's just Chelsea, I'm over here freaking out and you are fine. And you help me be fine. And that's why I enjoy working with you.
We all need that.
All of us. I will bring the coconuts and the umbrellas and the beach chair vibes to your launches. That's what I'm here for.
I really love this. I love this. How do you work with your clients?
So typically my clients find me when they are about to launch again and they know that I am not here for the burnout. I'm not here for the missing sleep. I'm not here for the never seeing my kids, never leaving my house, never walking my dog. I'm not going to end up in the hospital again, because I've had clients tell me that they've ended up in the hospital from launching. So they find me when it's I want to create higher dollar results, but I really don't want to pay the cost that I've paid in the past in order to do that. And so we work together, really refining their strategy and their messaging based on the data from past launches and the data in their business. But we also align all of that with what do you have going on in your life right now? And can we also please leave space for life doing the most, because it always will do the most, especially when we decide to launch. It will just decide, I'm wilding out, I'm out here, I'm in the streets, and all of a sudden you're getting emergency calls, your kid is sick, like everything is going crazy, right? So can we just leave space for those things too? Like we really work on ensuring that your energy, your well-being, and just the spaciousness that you need is present in the entire process while the strategy and the messaging is over here working to get you the results that you want to see.
Oh, I love that so much. And I love that you mentioned life doing the most when you're trying to launch. Last week, I had a call with our Summit in a Box students, and someone was on feeling like a little nervous around like actually picking a date and starting her summit because she's like, I'm a single mom and like my kid's sick home today in the other room. And how do I do this and know that's not going to happen? And I think she wanted me to be like, oh no, it's going to be fine. Like everything's going to turn out. But I was like, oh, he will be home. Just count on him being sick or school being closed and him being home. So how do we plan for that happening? So I love that you said that because that's my experience. I am always sick or a kid is sick or COVID happens. Like something happens every time I'm trying to do it.
There's something every single time. And a part of that is like, especially if you get sick before, during / after a launch, a part of that is your body is reacting to everything that you are now like doing. Your mental energy is taken up, your emotional energy is taken up. You're doing a lot right now, right? And there are a lot of us who are carrying a whole lot in life, period, family, friends, business, clients, growth, all these things that we are carrying to add a launch on top of that. Your body is just responding. So make space for that. Recognize that it will happen and account for it in your launch plans. That's something that I always make sure to do with my clients. And anytime they're feeling overwhelmed as well, because a lot of my clients can be single parents. I've worked with expecting moms who are about to give birth like right before their launch or right after their launch. And it's just like, okay, how do we make sure this isn't crazy? It needs to be accounted for.
I have done that too. I love it. Okay, so yeah, I know everyone listening is like nodding their heads and thinking of certain experiences of these crazy things that have happened when they've gone to launch. What do you think is the biggest thing that keeps people repeating these patterns? That keeps, like, for example, me saying I am sick, like every time I launch, I'm always sick. What are we repeating that's burning us out time after time?
Well, I think that one, it's very normalized in the industry for us to hustle, to grind, to push, to strive through launches. Like this is just what we've been taught to do. This is the culture. This is the space. And so even starting to think of a different way of doing this is very outside the norm and almost like, I never actually thought that it was possible. It doesn't even occur to us as like an option, in our thought processes. But I also think that coming from that normalization, trickling down to our like day-to-day operations in a launch, there's also the fact that we have assimilated that belief. We now have owned that and said, this is what's required. We now believe that this is what's required in order to create a high dollar launch, in order to create the results that we want. So we now believe that I don't know how many of us will actually admit to this, but like it might be subconscious, it might be like overt, but there's this thought process that, oh, if I'm sick or if there's a lot going on, it kind of means that I'm on the right track. It kind of means that there's something going right because if the launch is doing the most and life is doing the most and I'm striving and I'm hustling, great. It means I'm going to get the launch I want. It means I'm going to get the results I want. And so we repeat the patterns like all the time because they feel affirming for us, because they feel like, oh yeah, this is what gets me the results. I'm on the right path. And we don't realize that there is another option. There's another way. And another way also feels super risky. I also want to acknowledge that because it feels like if I don't hustle, if I don't grind, if it's not all up to me and I don't do everything and be everything to everyone, including every single moving part of this launch, if it's not superwoman time, then superman, superperson time, right? Then what's the outcome, right? There's a huge risk there of the outcome not being what we intended it to be. And we all know how disappointing and like just deeply sinking feeling it can be when your launch doesn't go the way you plan. And so we do everything that we can do to avoid that feeling, which means I'm not going to take the risk, right? I'm not going to take the risk that this might not work. So I'm going to do everything I can to make it work, which means super person time, esa maches, let's go. And so there's a combination of, this being the culture or own personal beliefs and not wanting to risk it. But I think that this is why I've integrated my approach the way that I have, because if you base your decisions on the data and if you work with the numbers that you have in your own business, in your own launches, then it makes it easier and reduces that perceived risk of things not working out, because the numbers are telling you that it's likely to work out. So you can walk in a bit more confidently, knowing that you have some more space, some more breathing room. That perceived risk is reduced. So you can engage another option that is not as es on my chest kind of vibes, but is more, okay, I'm going to nap some more. I'm going to turn off the alarm and wake up whenever I want. I'm going to actually take a walk spontaneously today. I'm going to decide, actually, I don't even need to look at the launch today. It's okay. It's doing its thing. I'm okay. We have space to make those decisions because the data has told us you do have space to make those decisions. So I think there's multiple reasons why we continue in the patterns, but if we integrate the data, it can give us the confidence to start to release and kind of walk ourselves back from those patterns a bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Number one, I'm so excited to dive into the data, pick your brain more about the data in a little bit here. And I want to jump right to it, but I'm not going to let myself because I think there's other things we need to talk about first. Very excited about this. But you are so right about how we are trained by ourselves, somebody, I don't know, to feel like when we're not hustling, something is wrong. I feel like that. I feel that every day there's not a bajillion things in Asana for me to do. I'm like, something's wrong. Everything's going to explode. What can I do? And I go looking for things to do. And it's so silly.
Something must be falling through the cracks if I don't have a bajillion things on my to-do list.
Yes,
yep.
Exactly. Okay. So all right, let's talk about the flip side of that quick. Can you kind of paint the picture for us, since a lot of us can't picture this ourselves? What can a lush and a luxurious launch actually look like?
So I'll tell you what it looked like for one of the clients that I worked with, who was one of the most extreme cases that I've seen. She's the one who told me she ended up in the hospital from her past launches. And the crazy thing about her launches is that she was hustling and grinding so much. She wasn't leaving her house. She couldn't walk her dog. Her dog was stuck inside for 3 weeks because she was stuck inside for 3 weeks. She didn't shop for groceries. She forgot to eat. She was up until 2, 3 a.m. All of this probably sounds familiar to you all, right? And she literally ended up in the hospital after her last launch. And the crazy thing was that she wasn't seeing the results she wanted. Her results were capped at 22K, 21K, 25K. That was where she was oscillating at in terms of dollar amount in sales. And we worked together. And I am telling y'all, she actually got sleep. 8 hours, 9 hours every night. She was out walking her dog every single day. Brunch, spontaneous brunch happening with friends 2-3 times a week. Whereas remember, she was shut in to her house for 3 weeks, straight, versus spontaneous brunch 3 times a week. Hello, right? She was actually going out for groceries. She was actually enjoying her meals, like actually eating and enjoying that, and she told me that she had never felt this free in her business in since she started her business and since she started launching her program. And the fact that we like 3x her results to go from 25K to like 62K in that time span was just the amazing icing on the cake. Because our goal was, I think our goal was something like 50 or 40, something along those lines. And we tripled it. And so, yeah, that's what's possible. I like to tell my people, whatever you want it to be. Like, our spa day is your vibe. Is it just walking around the corner to Starbucks and getting your favorite coffee every day? Is that your vibe? Like, what feels lush and luxurious and like a treat for you? There's no reason why you can't fully integrate that into, okay, I have a webinar tomorrow. Today, I sleep all day. You can plan for that. Like, this can literally absolutely be the way that you structure your launches if you want.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so what tips would you give us for getting on the path to creating our version of that?
Yeah, I think the first question is actually asking yourself, what would that look like for you? What fills you up? What activities, what actions do you enjoy? And in terms of, I think there's a certain level of self-awareness that comes with this, because you have to know what fills your own cup, right? Like, if you're not sure, if you've been disconnected from that for so long that you don't even remember, then that's probably where you need to start. Because that's a question that I can answer really easily. Like, my most luxurious launch is naps all the time, every single day. Like, that is my jam, right? But that's me. What about you? So it's first kind of answering that question of what fills my cup, what refills me, and just having this like hella long list. If you can come up with 20, 30 things, right? Like, just like give yourself a list of all the dream things, and then start to examine, okay, because now you have to integrate that into whatever your launch calendar looks like, right? So where do you need to find space in this? Where do you need to adjust things? Do the dates need to change? And this is like a shift in priority, because the priority is no longer the webinar or the challenge or whatever launch event it is. The priority is now taking care of you, right? So are there places where you need to shift your expectations of this launch? Are there places like actual dates you need to change, timelines that you need to expand to give yourself more room to take care of yourself while you execute and plan for the launch? So there's a slew of questions that I typically walk my clients through, but it's kind of like a two-phase process. Is one, examine what refills your cup. And then two, how do you integrate that into your launch actions, into your launch calendar from the moment you start preparing? Because this is not just running the launch, it's also the planning. Because some of us decide to launch and then, smush everything into like a 2-week time frame and kill ourselves with like writing all these emails and stuff. But some of us also do have a longer planning timeline, but we don't account for the fact that it still takes energy to plan over that long time frame. So you still need to include things that refill you, even if you give yourself 3 months to plan for a launch. Like you need moments in there. So how do you integrate those things that fill you with the launch calendar that you have? That's one of the quickest ways, I think. If you can add in one thing a week, even, that's one of the quickest ways to just start to reset this pattern, rewrite this pattern and this relationship that you've had with launching that just has not served you up until this point.
I love that. What I'm hearing from you is like, these changes aren't going to happen on accident. You're not going to go from running launches that burn you out and make you sick and miserable to just like magically all of a sudden being like, oh, this one is actually really awesome. Like, you're going to have to be intentional about what you want it to look like and plan it in. Yeah, that feels much more realistic to me. Something else you mentioned somewhere that I wanted to ask you about was like the different mindset and emotional pressures and triggers that come in with launching. Can you like talk to us a little bit about like maybe an example or something like that and how to navigate things like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the most common things is, well, actually, I'll mention two that I see all the time. Is one, is this going to work? You know, we open the doors and sales are only just trickling in, or we get, you know, to that middle of the launch slump and it's just like, are we doing something wrong? Is there something else that we could be doing? And that's the second kind of like mindset story thing that can trip us up is, can we be doing something else? And also, will this work? Those are the two that I see. And I think in those moments, it's important to, first of all, disconnect from the launch because you are not your launch. Your business is not your launch. You can run a business, an online business with a course or coaching program and never, ever do a live launch. I want y'all to understand that. You have full permission to never launch again. And this is a launch strategist and launch copywriter telling you this, okay? Like, Krista and I love launches. We will launch all day, every day, but launching is not imperative to selling or successfully growing your business, all right? You don't have to launch to do those things. Now, that said, first step, disconnect from the launch. Because, like I said, you're not your launch, you're not your business, or the business is not the launch. And there are other things in your business that are working, right? There are other things in your life that are quote unquote working for you, that are beautiful and fulfilling. So reconnect to those things for a moment and remember that those things matter to you. Tap into that feeling, that fulfillment that you get from those things. With that, what it does is decrease the anxiety around those like doubts, fears, mindset triggers that come up for us. And it kind of grounds us and brings us back to center emotionally a little bit so that we can come back and look at things a bit more objectively. Because when you don't do this disconnect, you're freaking out. You're like panicking and frantic. Even if you're trying to push it down and suppress it, you've got like, there's a whole emotional minefield happening in your heart here, right? Like one little comment or one little thing on your to-do list can set you off again. And so trying to determine and answer the question, will this launch work? Is there something else I need to be doing? Trying to answer those two questions from a heightened emotional state does not support you. And it doesn't get you to the best or even most effective response. So disconnect first. Come back when you've kind of centered a little bit. Like you can take half a day or take a nap, right? Like do whatever you need to do to reset. Come back and go to the data. Go to the numbers immediately. I am always the person who will tell you, and I got this from a friend of mine, Courtney, and she says data over drama, and I'm all about it, right? Come back to the numbers. What are the numbers telling you about the potential of this launch? Are your webinar registration rates what you needed them to be? Is your show up rate what you needed it to be? Are your average open rates what you need them to be? Are your click-through rates what you need them to be? If not, then you can say, okay, it's less and less likely that I'll get to where I want to go, right? I mean, that's the answer to the question of, will this launch work? Because work is not so much like, is it good? It's, can it get you to where you want to go, right? And there are tons of metrics for that, by the way. Sales are not the only thing to measure launch success, but that's another that's a whole other discussion. But I do want to say that sales are not the only thing you can measure here. That being said, you can look at the numbers and look at your data and say, okay, this is not getting me to where I want to go. Is there something else I can do then to address this particular metric where there's a gap, right? Because, and this is why I say you have to start with making data-based decisions with your strategy and your messaging. Because if you know what your numbers should look like, and if they're not looking like that, then you get to say, what else can I do? But if the numbers are looking the way you want them to look, even if you're feeling frantic and like crazy, the launch is doing what it was supposed to do. Step back, leave it alone, right? Let it do its thing. But if it's not, then the question becomes, okay, what do I need to do here? What can I do here? Do I even want to do something here? Because that's the other thing too, is like, do I have the energy, the capacity, the bandwidth to do something, right? Because if I'm over here serving my clients and launching and the numbers don't look the way I want them to look, I might not have the energy to do anything about that. And if that's the case, then do I just adjust my expectations of what this launch will be? Or do I try to find the energy and the capacity and the bandwidth in some way to do something about it, right? These are the questions I help my clients to answer, because this is what it comes down to when we have those kind of mindset triggering questions: is distance, data, and then adjusting decisions based on that.
Oh, this is so, like, I feel like I help our accelerator clients walk through this on, like, maybe not quite a daily basis, but everything you were saying, I'm just like nodding along with, because it is so hard to make good decisions when you are in that state of, oh my gosh, this isn't working. What do I do? And like, it's easy for us to be like, okay, what are your conversion rates? Okay, that's the issue. Oh, here's exactly how you should fix that. Okay, thanks. Report back soon. And they're like, oh, that fixed everything. But it's so hard when you're in that place.
When you're in it. And I don't know about you, Krista, but it's hard for me too in my own launches when I'm in it.
It's way easier with someone else's launch.
This is always the case, right? If you're an expert of any kind and you're listening in on this podcast, it's always easy for your own stuff. It's harder. It's way, way harder. Or rather, it's always easy for someone else's stuff. It's harder for your own stuff, right? These are the things that I try to also tell myself. It's like, it's not, the decision that you make is not going to serve you if you don't give yourself that space. And then you actually have room for your own understanding and expertise to kick in. Because when you're frantic, you don't have any room for that, So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay. I also wanted to dive into something else from your bio that caught my eye, or attention, I guess. And then something else you said on here. You talk about using data. You said objective business data and subjective personal data. First of all, can you tell us a little about what you mean by those two things?
Yeah. So the objective business data is literally the numbers that I kind of broke down a while ago. This is like your conversion rate on your entire launch funnel, like webinar registrations, like where are your touch points that your people are finding you, and where are those leads coming from? All of those numbers that we typically like to look at in a business. Those are that's the business data that I'm talking about. And then the subjective personal experience piece is thinking back to your last launch, or the launch before that, or the launch before that, however far back you want to go. What drained you? What didn't work for you, right? Because here's the thing. You could have done a 5-day challenge, and it was the highest conversion rate you've ever had in a launch, right? Like, let's say you did a 5-day challenge and you got 15% conversion on the entire launch funnel, but where before you were at 8. That's phenomenal, by the way. Even 8 is crazy. Let's just say that, all right? Even 8 is amazing. But let's say you were at 8 and now you're at 16, 15, whatever the number is. But you were hella drained from that 5-day challenge. Now the question becomes, I have the numbers. I understand what my personal experience was. Do I want to repeat this challenge? Because I know it works like gangbusters. It gets the result that I love. And if I do, how will I adjust my own actions and energy to refill myself so I don't feel the way I felt the last time I ran this challenge? Or do I say, you know what? I don't even want to even think about trying to give myself the energy to do this, because I have a whole lot going on in my life right now and a whole lot going on in the business. And so let's just not do the challenge. I'm okay with a lower conversion rate for right now. Those are the decisions that you get to make when you ask yourself, what's the data telling me? How did I feel when I ran that strategy or ran that play or executed that action? What was my personal experience? And then you can ask, do I want to repeat that? And if not, how do I change things? So that's kind of what I mean by like
Yeah.
those two
Oh my
things.
gosh, that makes perfect sense. I am really good at the data part. I will look at the numbers all day long and make decisions. I don't think I've ever once been like, how did I feel last time? How did that go for me? And it's like, duh, why do we not do that? And then combine the two pieces. The launch can be awesome and we can feel awesome, but we have to analyze that data also. Oh my gosh, you're just opening my mind. I love it. So good. Okay. I mean, I feel like you helped my brain effectively explode. I hope everyone else listening has had that experience as well. So to round it all out, can you let us know, like, if there's one takeaway we get from today, what would you want that to be?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been saying it. It's like you can have a launch you love. You can have a launch you love. You get to do that. Like as business owners, there's so much that we signed the contract to become a business owner and we didn't even, there was fine print that was invisible, y'all. Like it was so fine that we didn't even read it. And so we sign these contracts and we don't even know what we signed up for. And we walk into a launch and we're like, oh shoot, I didn't realize that this is what I signed up for. I didn't realize that this is the contract I signed. And I don't know if I want this, right? But the great thing is the terms are negotiable. You can go back, rewrite that contract, sign it again in a way that actually makes you happy, makes you feel supported, and still gets you to where you want to go. And what that requires from us is just a real intentionality and self-awareness about what we need, like honesty about what we need to support our own well-being in the middle of a launch. And then the skill, I think, to fuse those two, because it's going to take practice. You're not going to necessarily feel like, oh my gosh, my launch is amazing the first time you want to launch like this. Like it's not going to be from zero to like, if the versions of your launch before that drained you were like zero, you're not just going to go to 100, oh my goodness, fully luxurious launch in one launch like cycle, but growing that skill of fully integrating what you need with your launch and doing so in a way that gets you to that result, and or you adjust your expectations and your goals and your actions to ensure that you're not broken or disappointed when you don't get to the result you initially wanted. That's a skill that we all develop once you start to engage this process. So if there was anything, it would be that you get to have a launch you love, and the pathway to get there is not as complicated as you think.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Can you tell us where people can go to learn more about you and what you offer?
Yes, I am on Instagram at the Launch Copy Coach. That's my main place of abode on the interwebs, if you will. So if you have questions, if you want to talk through anything we talked about, if you want to even like run your launch numbers by me, I will answer because I love data. I will always be the person to answer anything data related or, like subjective experience related as well. This is what I do, right? So I'm on Instagram if you want to learn more. My website is thechelseawallace.com. And I also have like stuff there around. I have my case studies download that Krista will have in the show notes for you all, where you can see how I've worked with my clients around great results and sustainability. And then you can also learn more on my website about like what I do and how I work and all that jazz.
Awesome. That sounds perfect. Like you said, I will link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Chelsea. This was so amazing. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. For show notes and resources mentioned in the episode, head to the link in the episode description. In the next episode, I'm going to do a little behind the scenes and share my top takeaways from 2023, some summit related, some launch related, some not. So it should be a fun one for any of you who are into that kind of thing. For now, go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your high converting virtual summit.